chapter 3, I'm going to ask you to explore how to display data, categorical data, by one problem, and then you'll actually do some exercises in the book to reinforce that. So this is the problem that you will access via the module on Canvas. I ask you to create a bar chart, create a segmented or stacked bar chart, a pie chart, using one genre as a label and rating as the value, create a pie chart using one rating as a label and genre as the value. So you'll see the reverse conditioning of that, and then compare these. This is the problem you'll be working with, movies and their ratings. Here is the example I'm going to show you. This comes from the Pew Research Center, has to do with the major reason for owning a gun and broken down by where you live. So if I wanted to display this data, I could highlight it and then go to Insert a Chart, and Google Sheets automatically makes some assumptions, and in this case, it breaks it down into the major reason for owning a gun and then where you live. So if you own a gun for protection, 71 people lived in urban areas, 71 suburban, and 62 rural. What you can see here is that protection is obviously the main reason for owning a gun. Hunting is next, sports shooting. And again, you see that sports shooting seems to be more popular in hunting, and sports shooting seem to be more popular in rural areas. You can switch the rows, which sort of switches the conditioning. If you live in an urban area, what are your major reasons for owning a gun? Again, what you can see is the breakdown is pretty similar no matter where you live. What's the most likely reason for owning a gun? What's the next most likely reason, etc. You can see a few differences, but overall the trend is about the same. So again, if I go back here, if you own a gun for protection, where do you live? If you live in an urban area, what is your reason for owning a gun? That is reverse conditioning. Okay, so here's my chart. If I'm answering questions as I ask you to do in the practice, I can copy this chart. If it's just highlighted, I should be able to copy it. Then I can open a document, and then I can paste it. In this case, I don't want you to link it to the spreadsheet. I just want you to paste it unlinked. And there you should get a picture of the chart. And then you could title this your name, this is stats, and this is the chapter 3 practice. And then you can come down here and write about it. This chart shows why you own a gun based on where you live. You could be a little better than that. For example, if you live in an urban area, what is the main reason you own a gun? Something like that. Okay, so let's go back to my example. So one of the first things I ask you to do is make a bar chart, and then I ask you to then make a stacked or segmented bar chart. Your book calls it segmented, Google calls it stacked. So if I come over here and I get stacking, I can say standard, and then those are the actual values. 62 if you owned a gun for protection. Again, I'm going to switch the rows and the columns so it agrees with what I have over here. If you live in an urban area, 71 people owned a gun for protection, 37 people owned a gun for hunting, etc. The other interesting thing, although you can see this here, is that the breakdown is pretty similar. You can stack this by percentages. It doesn't change that much in this case, but you can, sometimes it's a little easier to compare it relatively. You might find that with the movies and the ratings, the genre and the ratings, to change it to a 100% stacked column chart. Again, your book calls it a segmented bar chart. And again, I can copy this, I can go to my document, I can paste it, I'm going to paste it unlinked, and there's the picture, and then you can write an explanation of it. Okay, the next thing, and I'm going to delete these two now just so it's a little easier to see. I want to discuss this idea of a pie chart and then reverse conditioning. So this is pretty easy. So if I just highlight these and I go to a pie chart, it just, Google at first is like, wait a minute, just doing protection, all these people own guns for protection. Yeah, well, again, I'm going to switch the rows and the columns, and because I can highlight those as a group, it already knows that, let me make this smaller so we can see. And I'd like to check just to make sure that 62% of the people that own gun for protection are from rural areas, 71 urban, 71 suburban, and 71 urban. That checks. Now I can also edit this chart, and if you go to customize, you can give it a title. Folks who own gun for protection, where they live. So you could give it a title, because it didn't automatically do that. But suppose that was easy because I could just highlight the category protection and the categories urban, suburban, and rural all at the same time. What if I wanted to do hunting? Well, I'm going to choose that row, and notice I can't just highlight urban, suburban, and rural again. So I'm going to create my pie chart. And I'm going to switch rows and columns. And just to make sure, so my value is hunting, and I want my label to be, oops, so I'm going to choose this. I'm going to edit it. Sorry, I slid it so I could see these things. So I want my label to be this row. So I'm just going to click on that row. And now it should tell me rural, urban, suburban. And then I'm just going to double check. Rural is 48. Some of this isn't as easy. Notice I'm looking at hunting, where you live if you own a gun for hunting. Again, does my chart show that? No, so I might want to edit it and customize and put in a title, where you live if you own a gun primarily for hunting. And again, you just might want to double check those numbers. Rural was 48, that's correct. Because sometimes funky things can happen. Urban was 37, that's correct, and suburban, I can't see. Anyway, just how do I do that if I want this row and these headers? Now, suppose I wanted to reverse a conditioning. That was, if you own a gun for hunting, where do you live? How about let's do, if you live in a suburban area, why do you own a gun? So again, I'm going to click on suburban area. I want a pie chart, and make this smaller so I can see. I want my label to be this row. So now it's telling me 6 people that lived in the suburban areas, and it also gives me the percentage owned a gun because they need it for their job, 11 had it for part of a collection, 30% had it sport shooting. So you can choose the column you want to graph and then you can choose the label that you want. So again, then you can copy that. You can go to your sheet and you can paste it. And then you can write about it. And again, you can, oh, I didn't put a title on this one. Oh yeah, they did put a title on this one, Suburban. So part of the thing you should be doing is playing around with this, figuring out how this works, how to make graphs the way you want them, and then describing what they actually show. That's what that's all about. Taking categorical data, displaying it, and describing it, and getting what you want. How do you want the breakdown, what you want? Again, just to make this video longer, no, not really. How is Google coming up with these percentages? Well, this is where, we'll talk about this later, this idea of marginal distributions. If I wanted, I would need to total these columns. So I can put in a formula, and then I can just copy that formula, and then I can put in a formula here, and I can copy that across. Oops. And some of the questions you'll ask is, what percentage of people own a gun for hunting? Well, in that case, I'm using the margins. 119 people owned a gun for hunting, primarily out of 467 people. That would be getting totals from the margin. And if I said, if you live in an urban area, what percentage of people own a gun for sport shooting? So that'd be 21 out of 153. Versus if you owned a gun for sport shooting, what percentage of people lived in an urban area? So that would be 21 out of 81. So that's, again, a different condition. In this case, the condition was if you own a gun for sport shooting, what percentage live in an urban area? If you live in an urban area, what percent of those people own a gun for sport shooting? So that's a little bit of preview as well, and perhaps some questions you need to answer. All right, hopefully that helps you complete this.